the world needs skeptics. I'm probably not one of them. Personally, like I'm skeptical about, say, like institutional and authoritarian type things, but I'm not skeptical about the person I meet face to face. Everyone gets a chance.
You give them the trust up front.
Yeah, and we need people that don't, because so that's a balance in society that we need, right? Or else there'd be lots of wrong things happening, and the skeptics sort of stop. You know, they're sort of the gatekeepers of a lot of that. So I think. Naturally, I lean towards being able to, silo problem projects, and refocus, compartmentalize. That's the 1 in 100 or the 1 in 20.
Don't let the low probability negative outcome dominate your psyche and disproportionately affect you. Okay, all right, Site to Studio podcast. Highly anticipated guest, I guess, because we, over a year ago, we did a podcast together, and I'm still today asking when's the Scott episode dropping. So here it is. Here's the Scott episode.
Yes, I had a quick listen to the first 5 minutes of us having a chat a year ago that didn't get released. And it was really funny because in the first 5 minutes of that, we spoke about the last time we spoke, which was like two or more years ago. And it was, I remember at the time we had such a good conversation. We spoke for over 2 hours. We digested a lot between the two of us.
You're teasing them now.
But to be able to sit down with you now, and have a chat 12 months on, so much has happened. I thought it was a really good, exciting opportunity to have another chat with you.
Yeah. I guess, do you want to tell us in your own words sort of what that amazing transition has looked like for you in the last... It sounds like you've become a woman. He's still a man. What that amazing journey has been like for you in the last year.
No culture war to have on this conversation. So the transition out of Dome and into W in the end was a pretty short one. I have some pretty strong thoughts about running a construction company, but also just running a business in general that have been established, I suppose, over the last 10 years. And Dome is a big business, and it was a big business. We created a big business.
I've been to the office. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you've been through the system and worked for it and stuff, and it's a great business. It's got really strong leadership. And, I'm pretty passionate about the way I want to do things, and it's probably not how most people think in our sector. And sort of going out on my own, pretty daunting after you're leaving something that's so well established and successful, for one. But yeah, it took the leap, and it's been an amazing 12 months, an amazing 12 months. Just to be able to lean into all of your crazy ideas, the things that when you've got a bit of a democracy at play, when you've got multiple directors, nearly 100 staff, to sort of turn the dials in a certain way or to make dramatic change is hard. But I've had the opportunity to start again, which, how often do you get an opportunity to start again, like in life? So, and that comes with, the knowledge and experience that you've got from a decade of building a successful business and brand, but then also the challenge reputationally that comes with. So if I'm going to do it again, how am I going to do it? And who's going to, and who are we? And why have we left? Why are we doing this? Sorry. Okay. So that was good. There was opportunity and challenge. And it stemmed from sort of pausing and saying what was great about the previous business, and what could have been better, and getting that feedback from all the stakeholders involved, subbies, suppliers, bottom up, subbies, suppliers, staff, team, then into architects, clients, taking that feedback in and then sort of bringing that through a funnel to be the founding principles of the new business. So take the best and then listen to what wasn't working and maybe what you weren't listening to because you just didn't have the time. And maybe people weren't going to tell you because they didn't, it's awkward. And then bring all that in and that lays the foundation. And then figure out what do I actually want to do? Like, what do I want to do? And then I realised it was, I want to work with the best architects on the best projects in the country. Now, you said it 2 years ago, biggest, baddest. That's probably not what the tagline is. We've probably matured. Maybe both of us. But
I'm still Gen Z, baby.
But yeah, it's working with the best architects on the best projects in the country and focusing on that. Like, and when you're at a certain size business, you take on jobs and smaller things because, it's a bit of revenue. You got to keep the wheels turning. I've been really selfish and really clear on that we're not doing that. We're not doing something for the sake of revenue or for the sake of growth. It's focus on the real niche of the niche that we're in and then over-servicing that and really leaning into it. So, that's basically been where we've started feeling like we've got some momentum. It's been well received, put together an amazing team.
So before we learn more about W and sort of, paying homage to your amazing tenure at Dome.
Yep.
What do you think is your biggest takeaway? Or if that's too difficult a question, what are the key takeaways for you?
The takeaways from Dome, one is probably we were pretty disruptive.
Very. It was the buzz was insane.
Yeah, and you got these legacy builders that are, I don't need to name names, but have been at the top and have been at the top for decades, 2 to 3 decades. And there sort of wasn't any room for us. And clients, it was sort of older architects with those established builders, bit of a cohort if you're involved, a mafia if you're not. And we sort of had to make some noise and say we're doing things a bit differently. We're going to build things a bit quicker. We're going to be a bit younger, a bit more enthusiastic. We don't think construction is just about what happens on site. Bring in some of we've had a chat about some of the commercial efficiencies into domestic and just shake it up. And we cut through. And it was hard to go from a really small business in the northern suburbs to break through into the leafy Toorak and some larger projects and stuff. But we did. And then I think we actually made space for some other people to come in as well, which I think was really cool. But it was just then doing it at scale. Traditionally you can't do more than 4 or 5 jobs because, it's how can the builder maintain quality if it's more than, on scale. So then it was introducing systems, normal business principles, and doing quality at scale, and that was through people. It was through a clear vision. It was through standards, principles, systems thinking, and being able to achieve that. So I think for me, it's being disruptive, not being afraid, seeing the success of that, but the biggest takeaway all of it was all the relationships. Like, they're not gone. They're all still there. The people, the leadership there, like I said, is really strong. And then all the people we've worked with, the clients, architects, like that's all forever. Your name. I always tell staff, don't follow a direction from myself or anyone that you think is going to compromise your own reputation, because your reputation is with you forever. And that's how I conduct myself personally as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's probably the biggest takeaway. The people and a bit of disruption is healthy.
So then moving on, going into W, you have absolute freedom as dictator of the business and your own dreams. What are those values? What is that mission? You've touched on it a little bit already, but what is at the core of what you're looking to achieve? What is at the core of W?
So, great question. Yeah, when I left, first thing I had to figure out is, what do I want to do? What do I really enjoy? And like I said to you, I want to work with the best architects on the best projects in the country. And then you're getting feedback to say, well, how do we do that? How can we do better? And that was that stakeholder engagement. And then from there, that sort of outlines your founding principles of how do you actually really service a luxury market or a luxury experience? And they're the other things that I've always been interested in. I'm interested in the experience as well as the product. There's sort of time, cost, quality triangle. I'd call it a square and add a bit of psychology to it and experience. So time, cost, quality, experience. For me, that's the fourth element that maybe isn't potentially being thought about. And then so I want people, when they're building their dream home, when they're spending all this money, they've done so well in business or whatever they've done, and they're sort of, this is the reason it's called a dream home is for a reason. They're nervous, they're vulnerable. These are some of the most professional people in the world. And they're nervous, vulnerable, like, is this going to go bad? All these bad stories. And sort of from the moment they meet us, I just want it to be enjoyment. We're going to be together for years. So it should be enjoying, relaxing. So the things that you don't talk about building projects like,
it just made me feel at ease.
Yeah, and that's the whole point is this is like you go to a McDonald's restaurant, you spend $1 on a soft serve. I don't know, I haven't gone to one for like.
Come on, you know how much a soft serve is?
Are they 40 cents? And you get the extra thing. But then people expect the McDonald's staff to be polite for them, and they've spent 40 cents. Clients will spend $10 million on a house and their builder will be rude to them, or their builder won't communicate correctly with them. There's a level of service that I think potentially is completely underdone in construction for whatever reason. I don't know why. And I just think if you're going to be spending $10 million of your own money, or whatever value it is, it's all significant once we're sort of in the space we're in. It should feel like that. It should feel like the whole experience should be a fantastic one you get to enjoy with your partner, with the design team, with the people on site, with the contractors, with the craftsmen. Everyone should be having, like, we're working in the top end.
So what is everyone getting wrong? So, or that might not be the best way of putting it, but what are those things that you're introducing? I guess just to bring it back to ground zero tactical level, what are some of those things that you are trying to do to make that experience like how it should be?
Okay, so one thing is at the core of it is trust. So like, once we've established trust, then we can start to relax for everyone involved. Once I trust you, we can now do business in a very relaxed manner. Although the walls are down, we can now just talk about facts. We're not hiding anything. So for me, I've always done this. I'll spend a year with a client before we sign a contract, a year of unpaid work, and all the way up until that sign, they could go elsewhere. And that's a trust building exercise. And trust also comes from meeting expectations. So, you expected me to rock up here on time. I was 3 minutes late. But we met the expectation of meeting basically at the time and doing this. Now, if I didn't show up, we've lost trust, right? So really, when you think about trust, it's just meeting expectations. So things like we have an opportunity really early on to give a client a budget for a project, opportunity to build trust, accuracy, meeting expectations. So that 3 months later, when the next stage of the design comes through, is that budget, is it still in line with the cost we gave? Or do I come back and say, sorry, it's 20% more. Why? Oh, because I'm just incompetent. I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So I always talk to my team about this as well. Every opportunity, every touch point is an opportunity to build trust. And if we have trust, then we can execute our skill set. And we're builders. So we're not doing other things for them. We're just focusing on building their dream home, managing the project, bringing together the stakeholders. But if we establish trust, we're there. So I'd say that's the founding principle of the business, is that we're working on trust. And then from the feedback I got, sometimes when you expand really quickly, you have to hire a lot of young people to fill positions or inexperienced. I've made an effort that all the touch points of the business are with really competent, experienced people. So we're not that super youthful, up and coming business anymore. There's a maturity to it. So when you're dealing with a luxury brand, you often don't have like, you know, a teenager sort of on work experience dealing with you.
You want to feel like you're walking into Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, and I think when you're dealing, you don't want, at the top end of any market, you don't want to feel like people are learning on the job, because you can go learn on the job at other businesses. It's like when your waiter serves you at Francois in the city. It's a different waiter to the person that's taking your order at McDonald's, and that's fine because McDonald's is a training ground for young people. But when you go there, you want that person to be bringing their experience from the years of being in the industry on how to do their job. So I think for me, I've always been pro youth, pro getting everyone from the bottom, grabbing it up. But that is a different value proposition. That's a different business to what W is. W is we've done our training and we're ready to serve and be competent. And it just means that every exchange is with someone that's sort of hyper competent at what they do. They're in the peak of their career and you're getting the benefit of it. So we have a level of experience at every level in the business, whether it be site management, the trades that are being used, project management, accounts, finance, estimating. It's all people are at the top of their game and we're ready to produce now. We're not learning. We're not going to be better, or we probably will be better, but we're not sort of saying, stick with us because in 2 months it'll be better. It's from the moment we're engaged or spoken to, it's sort of first class.
So one thing is about building trust and the other thing is not having to build trust because there's confidence there that's being displayed from day one. And I think a lot of these clients, it's not like they're against people who are inexperienced though, but just not for this project, just not for this scenario. It's just, they just want that effortless experience.
Yeah, they don't mind if there's learning going on in the background, if you've got some behind the scenes training going on, but they just don't want to be trained on. They don't want their dream home to be the playground for where you're teaching people.
So one thing I learned from you just now is you use all the one of the hot topics was ECI, right? Builders doing ECI.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of that came from a place of, well, we want client buy-in so that our work isn't devalued or seen as not valuable by the customer. What you're saying is it's not really about that. It's about using that opportunity to over-deliver 82 times before they even sign a contract with you. And that's building trust.
Yeah.
And that trust is more valuable than any sort of ECI fee or whatever you'd be able to get.
Yeah, I've never charged an ECI fee, but I think builders prefer ECI, or the average one, because not tendering's a nice thing, right? Having a greater line of sight on the project for a longer period compared to say a 4-week condensed period where you're hustling around trying to get quotes from everyone. But I've been basically predominantly just doing ECI. At Dome we were both tendering and ECI, but sort of my side of the business was predominantly ECI. Early contractor involvement, for anyone who doesn't know. But I've naturally gone towards that because I have an interest in it. I want to find out about them. I want to build the relationship, the trust. I want to know everything about the project. So if I've got some value to add, it's very hard to do in a tender period. But over the course of 12 months, we can really understand what everyone wants. Like what does each partner want? What's important to the kids? What's the architect want? What's the engineer? Get involved in the engineering. There's so many opportunities to add value and sort of represent the whole project and bring everything together. So yeah.
The poor service in the construction industry, let's say as a whole, from your more commodity work to the very top end. Do you think that's driven by the supply and demand dynamics of in the country? About, there's just people can be rude and still get work.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of behaviours that are inset because of the supply-demand problem that's been around forever. So you have most tradesmen haven't lived through a genuine recession in our industry, because in 2008 the government spent their way, like we sort of spent the way, and there was more construction going on, like all the schools projects and all the government. So we've never been in a time where you're really looking around for work and there's none on, and now is a really interesting point, because for some people it's the first time they've sort of looked up and there's not a bunch of work on the horizon. So now there might be correction in place now, but for most people they haven't experienced one. There's just always been something to go to. So it reinforces any non-high service behaviours. Even what was interesting, I just got back from the States, and the service from Uber drivers, because tipping's such a key component there. Like, to not tip, you have to make an effort, but it's cultural, right? So, whereas compared to Australia, barely any Australians are tipping their Uber drivers, so it's just a transaction. But as soon as you introduced a tipping system, the service level goes up, so it's incentive. So I think, what are the incentives to behave well here? Is there incentive to over service if the builder is just would after 10 years would drop you for someone that's $1,000 cheaper? Or is your incentive just to do it as quick and cheaply as you can?
Okay, so you're taking the accountability route, saying as a purchaser of these goods and services, or as a builder dealing with these trades, you are in control of receiving better service by being loyal to a group of vendors or suppliers, and that's one way that you seek to combat that issue.
We all are, upstream and downstream. We're all a product of how we're treating people, what we're incentivizing. You've just got to remember that, for me, one of the biggest things on any project is shared value, aligned incentives, and always remembering that self-interest always wins. They're three things. And shared value means that in every business conversation you're having, you've got to say, what's in it for both of us? How can we get on the same page? Because once we're both pushing in the same direction, we're really, that's when we're going to get real momentum. And that's the same thing as saying aligned incentives. Let's get us both going in the same direction. But also knowing that in your competitors, in your clients, in your suppliers, their own self-interest is going to guide them. They're not there for charity. They're not there necessarily for you. So you've got to incentivize so that self-interest wins. But it's if their self-interest is going in the same direction as you. So that's hard to do in a lot of types of construction. In commercial construction, I would call it, transaction construction is really hard. Anything that has a commensurate transaction at the end of it, being developments, offices, commercial, industrial. It's really hard to have big principles and morals and things. But the reason that I'm personally in sort of the niche of high-end homes, and then the niche of that is the top 1% of the top 1% of homes, is because it allows for these things. There's enough sophistication. There's enough. There's not a transaction happening at the end. There's a deliverable, but there's also emotion, and there's other things. They're non-financial elements that make up the whole.
I just want to really, if we can provide some value to the audience on the idea of reputation.
Yep.
Because I feel that, or I know that, we live in a society where it seems that men don't care about their reputation, and people for $800 will throw their name down the drain. What are people missing? And I guess, how can we help some people to understand that being honourable is a very high ROI activity?
Well, it's just the long term, versus being short-sighted, playing the long game. I mean, to me, it feels obvious that your reputation is with you forever. And this industry is not an enormous one. You know, you see the same people. My construction manager, Ross, was talking to me on site. He goes, you know what's funny? When you're here for long enough, you see the same people. They might be different businesses, like the crane guy rops up. You're like, oh, I've worked with him before, you know, or the guy pouring concrete. And it's not necessarily the business. It's they might even work for the council, but you've seen them. You've got a bit of recognition. And whatever they left you with last time is your sort of lasting impression of them. And it would be like, what I would talk about, like sacrificing your reputation is you're almost sort of putting up these barriers, you know, with the people that you're sacrificing your reputation with. So you almost build yourself like a prison. You know, if you've got a good reputation, then everything's open. You've always got an opportunity with anyone that you meet. But once you start, I suppose, making short-sighted, short-term beneficial things maybe for yourself that damage your reputation, it's sort of like you're putting up walls. And eventually they're going to close in. Because all you have, once you're damaging your reputation, is the person that doesn't know you, has never heard of you. So you're just reducing your client base or your staff base or your supplier base with every poor version of yourself.
Yeah, I think one of my great hopes is that we do see people caring more about their reputation and holding themselves to a higher standard and being honourable in the way they operate as people. But I'm not sure if the incentives are there, because the incentives might not be so obvious, because they can be so long-term driven and they can be so nuanced, and then they don't appear.
There's some internal principle in all of it as well. I think there was this really short period at the start of COVID where there was an opportunity. There was fear. Like there was fear. No one knew JobKeeper was coming, right? There was just that. We've got a problem. ScoMo comes and makes an address saying, flatten the curve, go home for a few weeks. So we had an opportunity. Everyone was sort of scared. No one knew. But we were thinking, well, at least as sort of leaders, we're in the box seat. We're the decision makers. Imagine how the staff feel that aren't the decision makers. You know, imagine that nervousness going home and talking about the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. So there was this opportunity to lead and sort of just settle and say, no one necessarily knows what's on the horizon, and we just did this in one email, but everything's going to be okay. You guys are going to get paid, even if we sit at home for the next, I think we said for months, we'll pay you. Like, don't worry. You know, we've been as a business for 10 years. We'll sort of put it all, it's all because of you guys, and we'll give it, you know, you don't have to worry. That was something that we did fully thinking there was never going to be JobKeeper and we could be shut down for however long. There was honesty in that, but it came from just that feeling of, like, this is the right thing to do. That was just an internal feeling. It wasn't like a business principle or, you know, it wasn't written on some sort of board. So I think...
But that's an example of aligned interest, because at the end of the day, it was good for business as well, in terms of the culture and the people and the team and the ROI you got from that.
But the feedback we got was really good, that people just sort of said, like, deep breath, it's okay. Because so many people got the same email the same day saying, being stood down, you know, maybe find another industry, you know, or do whatever. And it was sort of like everyone for themselves. And that was a really fear-based reaction that a lot of people would have had. But we didn't know. So you're saying it's aligned. At the time, looking back, good move, because in the end we didn't use JobKeeper, but we didn't need to because the business was growing. We're lucky in construction, right? But at the time, so that's what I'm saying. You don't have to have a long-term thought. It's just from an internal principle. And everyone's got different principles. But if you just bring... the way that you think about your family, the way that you think about your friends, if you bring that to business and how to treat people just at your core, then I think reputation will take care of itself, because your family and your friends probably like you and the way that you treat them. So I think it's just introducing, not sort of seeing this business as this cutthroat. And as you get older and you have a few bad business deals and a few people have done wrong by you, you can be a bit of a skeptic. that's hard. That's hard to push through and sort of keep the optimism, keep the sort of principles when other people don't feel like they're, responding in the way that you'd like.
So how do you keep that, how do you stay positive and open and, dare I say, that little bit naive as you become calloused in your business dealings?
Good question. The world needs skeptics. Mm-hmm. I'm probably not one of them, personally. Like, I'm skeptical about, say, like institutional and authoritarian type things, but I'm not skeptical about the person I meet face to face. Everyone gets a chance.
You give him the trust up front.
Yeah. And we need people that don't, because so that's a balance in society that we need, right? Or else there'd be lots of wrong things happening, and the skeptics sort of they're sort of the gatekeepers of a lot of that. So I think naturally I lean towards being able to silo problem people, problems, problem projects, and refocus, compartmentalize. That's the 1 in 100 or the 1 in 20.
Don't let the low probability negative outcome dominate your psyche and disproportionately affect you.
Yeah, we have, like, because we meet new trades all the time, right? And we feel like we have established reputation of trust up and downstream. Everyone gets paid. Every project gets finished. So it's like, you feel like that. You forget, though, that, and like what you were saying when we were talking about trust before, and you're like, oh, but you've got to remember that every time someone new comes to you, it's the first time they're meeting you. It's their first experience. So you can't sort of walk around being like, I'm the most trustworthy person ever. Look at my reputation. It's like, you've got to earn it again. Every day, you've got to earn it again with new people. But what I find is there's so many trades that have had something go wrong. So now they've got this enormous friction point at the start of entering and doing business with them, because they're like, they demand 100% payment up front, or they're aggressive on the phone. Like, concreters are a amazing one for it.
Careful.
No, that's all right. But there's this combative nature because they've had people not pay them. They've worked. They've been close to, going.
It's hard when you poured all that fucking concrete and then you don't get paid for it.
It's terrible. So concrete's the reason I said it, because it's high risk, high reward. There's big money at play every day. I was saying the other day, one of the guys on the team was just saying, like, I just couldn't do it because every day is like pressure. Yeah. Like, we think we've got pressure, but you saw through the wrong sheet of veneer or something, like, oh, that sucks. But you pour a slab that's got 100 grand of concrete in it, and it's on the piss. Like, we've got a real big problem. So we find then it's really hard to engage, because you might find that's the perfect concreter for our job, but we can't get past this combative front, like you were saying, this calloused businesses, people have done wrong. So what's the answer to that? I can't tell that person. All I can say is that they've now blocked potentially a real profitable branch to come into our system, because we just couldn't cut through the demands, the upfront demands. So having your sensors up for, like, is this a good person? Is this a good business? Is this a good new connection? But then I always try and people like you said, shared value. Like, let's not pay 100% up front. It's crazy. We're just never going to work together. But let's also not let you go through the whole project and wait and just rely on trusting me at the end. Like, let's make some small steps to get us going. Let's get, a 5% deposit to get you out on site, get some materials, do some work, let me show the client that some work's done, and then we start, having some shared value along there.
Mm. So you were in the US recently?
Yes.
How much can you share of what you were up to?
Oh, yeah, I can share. So I went to Stanford University for an executive education course that was probably centred around innovation, and it's in Silicon Valley, which is sort of the innovation hub of the world, and it was outrageously inspiring, like unbelievable, to sort of, and with a real sort of the topic of AI sort of being one that's global, but over there they're not still in the talking phase of, oh, is it coming, or how could we, how will it affect us? They're the doers. So they're doing AI. So sort of getting a glimpse behind the curtain of what's going on there. Really inspiring, and some really, really amazing takeaways to apply. Like, I applied on the plane on the way home, let alone it was like, what are you going to do Monday? It's like, what am I going to do after this class? And how can we affect that? So that was really, really interesting. And but the timing, it felt like I was going to a gold rush town. It's like what you sort of. I can imagine when people came to Melbourne during the boom, or Victoria during the boom, or when people went to like San Francisco when it was booming then, and like it felt like this is the place where it's happening.
So there was still that buzz there.
Yeah, so it's in San Francisco itself. The city feels like a bit on its knees. It's got big homeless issues, things like that. I'm sure. I mean, I spent 3 or 4 days in San Francisco, so I can't really comment. But not as vibrant as a Sydney or even a Melbourne. But Silicon Valley itself, is buzzing with.
And is it thriving? Is it all fueled by the AI? Like, is that what it's fueled by? You feel?
No, it's probably fueled by 2 straight decades, like from .com bubble from 2000 onwards till now, of just that's where all the innovation has come from. Like at Stanford, like their graduates are like the 2 founders of Google, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Nike. So it's like there's just this history of it there. So they've just been like, they know that's the engine room of the world. Isn't like the top 6 or 7 stocks in the US, like some huge percent of the whole global economy, and they're all sort of coming out of there. So it was really, really interesting. But just to have innovation at the front of mind. Construction is like not the greatest innovation industry. So, and just to learn from them, like, what is innovation? Like, what is it?
Can you define that for us? Can you help us?
So, innovation is usually an existing idea with a minor change or 1 or 2 change. So you've got an existing idea, and you can add, subtract, multiply. So then you've got your components of your existing idea. So then you can, potentially add something to it, or take something away from it, or multiply something within it, or divide something in it. So it's just there's some simple ways to think about it. So if you think about Snapchat is like Instagram for 10 seconds. So you just take away all the time of Instagram, you get 10 seconds. Right? Twitter is Facebook and 160 characters. Like, they're all just reductive. So the innovation is actually taking things out. And like a lot of engineers will tell you, like, the perfect product is when there's nothing else to take out. You've taken everything out. That's a surplus. So that was something that I took out of it, that innovation doesn't have to be like, I've got to create a brand new thing. You can take an existing idea and just adjust it slightly, but you can also just take some stuff out of it and just make it one thing. And sort of asking yourself in your own components, your own business, do we need to do that? Like, it might be a law, might be just something like, a big principle, but then everyone breaks it. So why is it in there? So take it out. Like that was some of the things that I took out of there, that I thought. And look, I'm coming from a startup now, so we don't have as many things. But if I was going back to a big business, I could think of all kinds of things we could have taken out that were just sort of legacy things that were just slowing us down. And
could you share? Do you have any top of mind things that people might have in their businesses that you would challenge, and that might be quite confronting, but you would challenge, or maybe you don't need that, or maybe that needs to be changed a certain way? Yeah,
no, fair enough. I've always just thought, from a building standpoint, the traditional builder. Now, no other industry sort of talks about a whole business like it's a person. This sort of, I'm the builder. Like, we just run a business. We're a building business, and we've got systems thinking introduced into that business. So we've got quality management spread throughout the whole business. And a lot of the times, someone who's gone from a carpenter and got their license, they're the builder. It's like their name. Their name's usually on the door, for one, but it's that sort of thing of, only I can sign off the frames. Only I can, be there for handover. And that's limiting in scaling anything. So I think sort of taking away those rules of like, why do you have to see a frame before it's signed off? Why do you have to be the person at handover? So I always, and we like to generate importance in ourselves because it feels good. I'm needed. Like the ego tells you that you're the only person in the business who could do that. And most business people are trying to get themselves off the critical path. So I think if you're thinking, write down all the things that you're the only person in the business that can do, and then try and figure out, have a long-term strategy or a short-term. Pick a couple of early ones off, some delegation, and give some responsibility to someone else. And then that gives you can actually put your head above the parapet and start thinking forward. What are some new things I want to do? What are some things I can, because usually when you started the business, you brought all this creativity and that's why you have a business, because you had a value proposition. But that's probably been a bit worn by all the operations. Like we're talking just before we got on air about this podcast. Like what a great thing. Like what a great thing you've done, right? To be a subcontractor to start a podcast. But then operations. You get a couple of bad defects or a couple of people don't pay or a couple of guys make some mistakes in the factory and we're back and you've got to do it. You've got to get out. You've got to get into operations and you've got to keep your business going. But you can't lose sight of the great ideas and just give up on them, and just say, oh, that's it. I guess I'm in operation. So I think you got to go in and you got to be hands-on to fix your problems in your business, but it should all be short term. You should always be trying to get yourself back into that headspace of innovation. What's next? How do I add value?
Yeah. It's really interesting in the past year, one person, my mum has always been in such a loving, caring way saying, you got to maybe just do one every month. Maybe just do one episode every month. He said, you can't just drop off. People will think you've gone crazy. You can't just do that. And she's so lovely, and she's obviously, she's not, I'm sure nice. She wants to scream at me, but she's not doing that because it's so abundantly clear to her. But but you're right, because you get so bogged down by the operations. And the other thing I was saying to you is I really wanted to get product right. I really wanted to get product right. I think as a sort of, I lean heavy towards marketing. So I thought I need to tone that back a bit and just focus on product, focus on the deliverables that we're giving to the customer, making sure that we're optimizing for value for the customer. Sure. Something I learned recently, there's a guy called Alex Hormozy. I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
No, I haven't heard of him.
He came up with something so he has a value equation. So he has an equation, a fractional equation that he uses to define the value of a product. So on the numerator, you have the dream outcome. So what is the dream outcome that you're selling or the customer wants to achieve? Multiplied by the perceived likelihood of success. So how likely the customer thinks that dream outcome will happen.
Yeah.
Divided by the sacrifice required by the customer and the time delay.
Okay.
So that's kind of your 4 quadrants almost of your time, cost, quality.
Yep.
But it's not just time. It's they call it time delay, and it's not just cost. It's sacrifice.
Yep.
It's not just the money. It's how much discomfort do I have to put in because I don't trust this inexperienced builder, versus how little discomfort I have to experience by working with W. And he made a really good point. He said a lot of small businesses spend all their time thinking about how to maximize the numerator, how to maximize the dream outcome, and how to maximize the perceived likelihood of success. But if you look at the denominator, you can look at that as like a drag coefficient. The lower that number, doesn't matter how poor the value proposition is up top. If that number approaches 0, your overall value prop is infinitely valuable.
Yep.
So, a couple of examples you gave to help illustrate the point. If you look at social media, right? So Instagram, Facebook, what's the time delay? There's no time delay. It's instant.
Yep.
What's the sacrifice? It's your attention, but you're just sucked into it and you want to give your attention. So there's no sacrifice. So even though that everyone knows that the dream outcome is terrible, and everyone knows that the perceived likelihood of the dream outcome is 100%, which is you're 100% going to get sucked into this thing that's going to steal your attention, you're still using it because it's free and it's right now.
Yep.
It's free and it's right now, so the drag coefficient is close to 0, and that means that the value is crazy.
Well, they've removed all the friction points.
There's no friction.
There's no barrier to entry.
It's negative friction. It sucks you in. It's the level of lubricity is off the charts. Yes.
So how are you applying that? So sort of keen to hear how you would think that affects, and is that to do with drawing you into your into operations, or
because it helps you think about how you're providing more value to the customer. I think I was saying, that's just been my really top of mind for me, is how are we making this experience the best possible experience for the customer? Mm-hmm. Like, are we thinking, like in every decision we make, is this pointing us towards providing more value to the customer? And I think what Alex Hormozy's value equation helps us do is it helps us pull it apart and think about it in a logical manner, because value is it's such a difficult thing to sort of quantify. But he's helped us quantify it. But you look at any decision you make. Is it improving the dream outcome? Is it improving the likelihood of success? Is it decreasing the time delay, or is it decreasing the sacrifice required?
Yep.
Every decision. Yeah.
But so the good thing was you sort of talking about social media, and let's say podcasting is one of them. You're creating a funnel by doing the podcasts. Well, you're expanding the funnel. Funnel's there, right? You're saying you naturally got to lean towards marketing, so sort of got to remind yourself. But I would be saying, well, who am I surrounding myself with? And not everyone's got the luxury of just sort of, you don't hire the perfect, COO product guy, and suddenly you got the dream running in the workshop and you're off, doing podcasts all day. But for me, it'd be top of the agenda. Top of the agenda would be, we all need to be doing the things we're really good at, and that's a good business. And someone's out there that's, or hopefully in here, that's wants more responsibility, wants you to get out of the shop because I want to be the one doing it, and wants to have those conversations with you where you've got to set the tone for operations and the principles, and really describe, I reckon, those things that you just said about, I don't want to have a barrier to entry to our business. I want every touch point to be frictionless. I want this to be a really good experience, all those kind of things. And then you need to, I feel like, let the team go do their thing, and not quickly go to run off and do another podcast, but it's more just along that fact. All I would say is that, if you're getting lost in something that it's not your natural strength that you're bringing to the business, you want to spend your littlest time in that sort of playground as you can, so you can go back to being a rock star at what you do, and because that's your role in the business.
Yes.
Your real value is to spread the message, and to open the funnel, bring more people in, and lean into your strengths, because that's what you owe. That's what you owe your business. So not that you don't round yourself out. So whenever I talk about things, I don't want to chalk in like 100%. It's like, just it's just the theme.
Everything's in the grey.
Yeah. So and then there's discipline. There's discipline in going into ops and really solving something with your team and getting your hands dirty. But there's discipline in pulling yourself back out and doing like for instance, I just realized I haven't done anything on social media for like a month because I traveled to England, traveled to the States, and it's just sort of just forgot, just didn't do it. Like lack of discipline, you know what I mean? Because there's no one telling me to do it. And, I just quickly wrote something for myself the other day, like get some discipline back. Friday, we're going, so I'll have to get out of here and do something in a sec. But it's people, the word discipline is usually only thrown around for things that you don't enjoy or things that are hard to do, but there's discipline in doing what you do well as well, because everyone thinks it comes natural to you. Like, he's the marketing guy, he loves doing this. That's not discipline. There's still discipline in doing things that you like doing.
It just requires a little bit less, doesn't it? Yeah. It just requires a little bit less. I mean, I could do this all day. I love talking I just love talking shit and talking about these things and whatnot. But I agree with you. I certainly, I really don't like allowing myself to use lack of resources as an excuse for not doing podcasts, for example. because you need to be innovative, and you need to work out a way to relinquish yourself of the things that you shouldn't be doing.
And it's back to that thing of that ego thing about I'm the only guy that can fix this. And sometimes if you're literally a sole trader at the time, there is no one else to look around. But if you are, and your ambition is to not be, then you really should be working on that. It should be like going, okay, I'm going to go get my hands dirty in the mud in something that I'm not naturally gifted at, or it's not the component of the business that I'm meant to be bringing every day. So there's a time cap on it. And if I sit here for the next 6 months doing it, that's actually a failure. It's not a strength of mine that I was able to diversify and stuff, because of just the opportunity cost, right? What have we missed? So anyway, that's just how my personal philosophy on it. You want to be diverse. You want to really understand all the aspects of your business. You want to be able to get your hands dirty with your team. But I think you're overall doing a disservice. Like, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I was on site every day, setting out steel with the steel contractor.
As fun as that might be, because you're just hanging out on site.
Yeah, I like hanging out with guys. I like hanging out with guys and girls on site.
Yeah,
going out for lunch after, middle of the day, and talking crap. Like, the site's much funnier than the office.
Yeah,
I've worked on sites a lot just when I was younger, and it's a far funnier environment. So, yeah.
What again, just providing some value to the audience. What's I think there's a way that people need to be thinking about doing free work, and strategic free work. So let's say you're saying you don't charge for an ECI, for example, but you're getting an incredible ROI from the trust building and from the relationship, from being able to qualify customers, and so you see and you experience the ROI and you do get a return on that quote unquote free work. Do you have any advice for, I guess, maybe younger people or younger businesses that are trying to get out there and just help them in terms of providing more value through strategic free work?
I think everything starts at hearts and minds. Be endearing. It's very hard to run a business by just being the cheapest all the time. So what are our non-financial indicators? Because that's where we can make some room for ourselves, and we can endear people into some loyalty. Like you were saying, loyalty is valuable upstream and downstream. So I would say with all of your clients, with everyone that you're working with, like hearts and minds, like how can I help this person? Start with service. And then I feel like it comes at you from every direction, because like some of my favorite trades that I've worked with for over a decade, some stories started with, just being like a grad and then suddenly getting taken out to like the basketball or lunch or something that, is nice as someone in their early 20s who has no sort of real power or anything. But like suddenly, a contractor takes you out for lunch and you're like, I'm never using another curtains guy ever again. Like, this is now my guy.
Well, people buy from people they know and like.
Yeah, and because like when you've just got that down line ball decision, you're leaning with the person that's endeared themselves to you the most. And I think if you're always competing on price, not on other factors, it's a really tough business.
Well, I think I might have just misled
Amazon or something.
Yeah. I might have just misled some people. I guess it's not about doing free work, because you're not doing free work. The build is, I'm sure, it comes at a premium. But what you're speaking to is I guess the importance of building relationships with people from a place of giving first before you take.
Yeah, and that's like, once again, it's just, for me, that's a natural thing. You want to give yourself. If your first thing is service, like how can I serve? Like, bring me like at W. I feel like we're sort of like bring us your biggest problems, bring us your most complex projects, and like let us help to solve them. Like that's really what we do, is like do really complex things. but it's built out of service. And then, so my first question whenever I meet an architect or client is like, how can I help? Like, send me some docs, send me something. What are you looking at? Oh, you might just be looking at some real estate. How can I help? How can I help you get the right block? How can I give you some feasibility advice? How can I point you in the right direction of the right architect for you? Tell me a bit about yourself. What designs do you like? Like, just feed me some data so I can add some value. But it starts on service. And I feel like that's how throughout your day you should be looking at everything. How can I help? What can I do? And that would be if you're a boss to your staff, if you're staff to your boss, if you're a business to your clients, or even if you're a business to your suppliers. Like, what do you need from me? What do you need from me to make sure that when I need some veneer, it's ready to go? What do you need? Do you need, how much notice do you need? Can we talk about upcoming projects when I'm tendering? Do you just want do you just want some info on the side so you can look at your own stocks and so we can activate and just get rid of some of that friction? But I think it just starts from service. Don't look at it as free work. You're just serving all day.
Okay. Because I think people have a real aversion towards that. Like they don't want to feel like they're getting duped or they're getting done or they're getting suckered into something or, but at the same time, they're not seeing the value in what it could provide for them. And I think it's not just just serving anyone for anything at any time for whatever. It's about being strategic and understanding, creating those aligned incentives, whilst understanding that self-interest always wins. Just reading my notes from what you said.
You're trying. I mean, you're trying to get into someone else's self-interest. That's what you're trying to do. So,
how manipulative?
Pardon?
I'm joking. I'm joking.
And I think you're always just trying to get more data, right? Like, and that's another AI thing. Everyone's data is becoming really important, but you're always just wanting more. You're wanting more inputs to affect your output. More knowledge is good. So even if you go out and you do, which I've done before, done months of free, and for me it's months because the end project size is really large. For someone else in a tradie in a car or something, it might be going past a job on the way home. Some lady's got a leak or something like that, and you're like, oh my God, this is last thing I want to do. But suddenly you go there. Either way, the fork in the road of this ends up being really good or really bad is still a great data point. A learning. Right, so you might take it in that had a look at a leak. In the end, it turned into a really good job. She asked us to replace the whole roof. Like, tick. That's the obvious one. Or she might sort of get there. You spend heaps of time with her, waste your time. It's still a data point of like, I now know her reputation.
Look at the batting average. Don't look at the each individual play.
Like, you still got to go up and have a swing, right?
Look at the probabilistic outcome of across 1,000 interactions where you're genuinely hearts and minds being endearing and servicing that person, providing value to them, real value to them. Over 1,000 interactions, more likely than not, you're going to be on top after those 1,000.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
You'd think you'd hope
Otherwise,
so.
you're probably doing it wrong, or you're not giving them what they actually need or want. And but yeah, certainly don't be disheartened when someone says, no, I don't want your help, or...
Oh, don't be disheartened by any failure. Like, that's the other thing about innovation. Like, fail fast, succeed sooner. Like let's get some failures going. Like, because like, if you... It was even... like, if you look at sort of innovation or ideas as like a vine that grows. Like, on your way to like a unicorn business like an Uber or something, there's like got to be 5 shit ideas on the way. Where you could have stopped and we all would give up like, we should change transport from taxi to something else. Then they hit a hurdle like regulation. Oh, stop it, cut it, it's over. But you got to like push through, adjust, because at the end of it, that's where like the gold is, So like I see my business as like a bit of a laboratory of testing ideas, trying, not being afraid, creating an environment that's safe to bring them up, no matter your position. And the other thing was, a big thing for me was when starting a new business was importing senior people from our competitors. from the old top dogs
importing
industry. To get all that education from our competitors, from people that have been there for 5, 6, 7+ years, and say like, well, this is what I think is really, from the outside, this is what I think is really good about that competitor's brand. Tell me everything about what you guys do with that. And these are the things that I think you guys weren't that good at.
You love the game, don't you?
Well, no, I just think because imagine we're just bringing in all this new knowledge, someone else for free basically, and that adds to our diversity of thought, so that we just weren't a bunch of people that had come from a previous business and now let's do the same thing. But then once you bring that in, it's got to be a safe place, which sounds really corny, but just somewhere where that can be expressed. Because then we go, that is the best idea. That is the best waterproofing system for a basement. We are going with that, and we didn't used to do that, so we're bringing that in. That is the best procurement strategy template or whatever, so we're bringing that in. This is the best safety system we've seen. That's what we're doing. And then you've just got this melting pot of ideas where you're sort of taking the best ones, and every now and again something fails, and you go, okay, it failed. Okay, why did it fail? Quick debrief, and we move on. But we don't stop or explore what we could have done better. And I think that sort of allows you to sort of keep growing, keep evolving, and keep pushing in the right direction. But it's all data. That's probably what the main point was, is that even if we're failing, even if we're doing all this unpaid work, it's still data. We're still honing our message. That's the other thing. The opportunity to pitch. That's a great thing. You hone your pitch over, you remember your first pitch, compared to the one you got now? Even if you're failing, it's like door knocking. It's an opportunity to get some feedback. That didn't work. How am I? Remember always understanding, knowing your audience. How am I pitching to that lady who needs with the leaky gutter in Toorak compared to I'm still a roofer? How am I pitching to the person whose shed has a leak in Berwick? They're two different. There's two different.
Well, you're drawing from those hundreds of data points in your head from your years of experience, so that you have. Just the sheer increase in confidence of being able to knowing that you can walk into any room with any customer, and there's a 95% chance that in 3 minutes that they'll be on board. For instance, that level of confidence alone will help you immensely.
You're just honing it.
Yeah.
Business and pitching and stuff in general, it's just something that you're honing, you're polishing over time. Oh, that was a bad bit. Let's not do that again. But they're all opportunities, right? They're all opportunities for growth. So I just think if you get pushback, or if you feel like you've wasted some time, that you're just not learning. You're not sort of adding it.
You touched on before servicing the boss. If you're an employee, I guess, looking to provide value to the business. What's your advice for people working for someone? You gave a really good piece of advice at the start, which was if you feel like you're asked to do something that's going to compromise your reputation, perhaps don't do it. What advice do you have for people working for someone? Let's be more specific to the industry. Let's say in a construction business, how can they maximize their time at a business and create the best outcome for themselves?
It's probably exactly the same as what we just said about the business owner. Unpaid work, right? It just seems like, what if I'm putting in extra hours, don't feel like I'm getting the next role and things like that. It's all still data. It's all still data of, is this business the right place for me to do it? Am I being valued here? But you've got to go and do it. To evolve, to learn, to hone your own craft, to learn new skills. I'm always been a take more responsibility. Let the leader tell you, no, focus on this. Just keep going until someone just says, hey. Remember, you're still a CA. Why are you asking me to why do you need to go out and pitch to our clients now? You've got some data entry to do. Because I think, I don't know if I've told you before, when I was a labourer and I was studying construction management, I asked to be trained as a site manager, and the guy said, no, you're a labourer, you'll always be a labourer. I'm like, mate, what do you mean? I'm 20. I'm asking to learn. So in the end, that place wasn't the right place for me. And I just think in a business, but you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to do the work. Like, don't be pulled into a promotion. Like, have them pushing you down. Like, my God, just like you're so clearly driving you out through the business that we have to actually put some guardrails around you to.
Because I mean, I think this is no secret, but with how tight the labour market is in Australia in general, businesses cannot afford to lose good employees.
Mm-hmm.
They really cannot, and you don't have to. I'd say compared to, let's say, in the US, like a white collar worker in the US compared to, let's say, here, that you really don't have to do a whole lot to really stand out a bunch.
That's a good point.
So, like, I had one of my mentors, I've probably said this on the podcast before, but he said, if in Australia you answer the phone, you're already in the top level of service. And but in the US, if you don't answer that phone within 3 rings, you're gone. And you've got to answer it with a lovely smile on your face, even though they can't see you, and with the lovely tone, and you've got to be ready, and you've got to go. Whereas here, all we're talking about is work-life balance and no emails after 6 and blah, 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 and blah. Okay, which is fair enough. But if you want to win, then take the 2 minutes and respond, maybe. Like, it's not that hard. Yeah, if you want to win. It depends what you want. Everyone wants different things.
It's funny that you said that. So many times I explain to people the bar is so low in construction because of the supply-demand issue. Like you said, like just that feeling that I get when I ring a new trade and they answer and they're polite and they say, sure, I'd love to look at your work. I'm like, oh, how good was that? How easy is new business? So how easy is like getting into, meeting new people. And then,
chivalry isn't dead.
Yeah. And then it's funny when clients, like when you just rock up to a meeting and you give them a price, and I try and get, prices back to people within a week, things like that, on complex projects. And, often they'll say, you're the 4th person I've called or something, or something like that, or even a price being accurate, or being willing to sign these days a fixed price contract. That's now a new thing. And to things that seems like with competence is obvious, but the bar is just very low because of the supply-demand issue, and even and then from a workplace point of view, like labor laws, like in America, you just cut half the workforce, no explanation, bad luck, we need to. Here, from government, it's even worse. But in the private sector, and especially in our mob, because that you can sort of cruise along. You can just cruise, and
but that's a beautiful thing for if you want more for yourself. It's such a beautiful thing because there's no competition, to stand out. Yeah. Like let's say as an employee, like if you just do a little bit more, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional because no one's ever done this for me. Like from the boss's standpoint, it's like.
Well, the other thing from a boss, like when you say from the bosses, so all these things that we're talking about, work from business to business, business to client, employee to director, they all work, right? Yeah. So how are we creating aligned incentives within the organisation? How are we winning the hearts and minds? How are we energizing and activating the best parts of every employee? How are we recruiting the type of people so we're selecting, we're selecting for this.
It always goes back. Yes. And I love that you've brought it back to accountability because it always defaults. This is not a sub story for business owners. This is not therapy this is not Business Owners Anonymous. It always
could be a good podcast.
It always comes back to accountability, doesn't it? It always comes back to, well, what are you doing about it?
Yeah, well, and if you feel like there isn't that that culture within your business of the things that we've spoken about, like who's in the driver's seat as a business owner, and then as an employee, if you feel like you're in a business that isn't appreciating the extra effort that you're going to, like who's in the driver's seat? You are. Everyone's in their own driver's seat. So everyone's got the ability and the power to change that situation, and everyone's got the accountability. The accountability is always with you, is what I would say to every person in the value chain.
Is that confronting for let's say some of your employees, that idea?
Of
being held accountable. Actually, can I ask you a better question?
Sure.
I want to ask you because I don't want to forget. How do you look at praise and punishment?
Like carrot and stick.
I think you understand what I mean. I don't know what. So praise versus punishment. How do you? I mean, isn't the dream that you want to run perhaps this is a false dream, but isn't the dream that you can run an organization, an amazing, successful organization, purely on praise, purely on positive reinforcement?
Yeah, I think that's utopia.
That is naive for me to. So please help me.
So, but I still think it's virtuous. I still think we should want 99% of our direction should be going there, and knowing that, that some stuff's unacceptable and some, but that's it. Once again, the outlier, the skeptic, like just let's let it be the outlier. So in the meantime, like when I was overseas, I had a really good session with the guy who's been the editor at the New York Times for 30 years, talking to us about how to write an email or how to communicate really in general, but we were focusing on writing. And he said, tell your employee or your person, your team member, tell them what you like and tell them what you would like to see in the future. Don't necessarily tell them what you don't like, because it's a negative message. We can.
But it's the easiest message to deliver, isn't it?
The short, sharp one.
Yeah, the negative one.
Yeah, but no, because it takes conscious thought, right? But we should always be conscious. And leadership, when you look down at it, and basically all I've been studying for a long time now is leadership. It's just sucks and it's hard, and there's no. It's just like I said, it's just service. You know what I mean? Like it's just everything's your fault. When you circle back to it, it's all on you anyway. Yeah. so it's a big effort, but it's highly rewarding because it's autonomy, right? And it's enjoyable because there's people coming along for the journey, and you get to set the tone potentially of what that journey is. But yeah, I would just say that so then there's this conscious thought, like you can't just go and say what you want to say. That first instinctual thing that comes to your head, you should say it to yourself, filter it, and deliver it. Because remember, like so many people do it, sending emails that make yourself feel good. I got one from a contractor yesterday. And I'm like, he would have felt great, but now he looks like an idiot. I'm his client. What are you doing? Why would you send me that? That's the dumbest thing ever.
So it's like send an angry email and then delete it?
Yeah.
Write an angry email and then delete it.
Know your audience and what's the outcome we're going for. Now, if the outcome's to make yourself feel good and the person you're talking to feel bad, right? If that's the actual outcome we're after, then keep going the direction you're going to go in. But if the outcome is the behavioural change, if the outcome is the betterment of the business, then it's the conscious message. It's not the reactionary one.
I've heard, actually, this one's from Mr. Hormozy as well. He said, when you lead and you set the tone using punishment, people always revert back to what that baseline expectation is. Whereas if you go with praise, they'll always be chasing that. They'll always be going higher and higher and higher and reaching their potential. And so he said, this is almost verbatim, he was saying, like if you look at, let's say your big consulting firms, like I think he said KPMG or McKinsey or something like that, everyone's stressed out of their minds and whatnot because the bar is set so high. Because the fear is there and because the punishment is severe if you don't succeed. Whereas if you can unlock, and it's so much harder, but if you can unlock a sort of leadership using praise only, or the great majority of the time, that you will inspire people to always reach higher as opposed to reverting to the baseline expectation. Completely
agree. And it's like that we were talking about before, that safe space. Innovation comes from diversity of ideas, back to you, unlocking operations to give you some more time to do what you're good at. If we're through mistakes, we're pushing people down. Nothing could be worse for innovation. And so maybe if you're in manufacturing and you just need to do the same thing 1,000 times a day, maybe you don't want a heap of innovation on the factory floor. Maybe you just want some punishment because if someone does a quality thing, it affects the whole production line. Maybe that's the space, but most of us aren't in those super high volume, no change businesses. I would say that once again, it's leading to the positive message. You're right, is literally uplifting. It's literally creating a safe place where we can fail, and we can fail fast, succeed sooner. It's literally, and it's just going to keep driving innovation, driving growth, driving more responsibility. Like if I keep reaching, I'm reaching for more responsibility. Eventually, we're going to get some traction on the ladder and make our way up, right? Which is then going to take you because that's the whole point you've got staff for, is to make sure you don't have to do every aspect of the business. So. Yeah, but don't worry. If my team came and sat around me right now, I am the sort of, I've sent some crap emails in my time. I've had some reactions to things that I didn't like to see. Even yesterday I would have had one. But you just want them to be the outlier, not the constant.
Yeah, I mean that feeling afterwards, and then having to go back and apologize, and just that immensely humbling feeling is something. I think it's something that we're not foreign to. I think everyone experiences it.
No, and one of the senior members of my team that I got from a competitor came because of the roller coaster of his previous employer, personality. You're the legend. You're the best staff member of all time. In the morning, in the afternoon, you're getting literally screamed at. And I haven't experienced really that at work, but I just couldn't believe I never would have known that about that at our competitor, and that's why I'm the benefactor of that. And then the feedback was, I'm just enjoying somewhere where there's consistency in the message and expectation of me. And if I fail, it's like, okay, as long as we're not doing the same failure every time. But to me, that I was the benefactor of what we're talking about not doing.
So what are you personally focused on? What's driving you now?
So what was funny is I've always sort of had some interesting thoughts, but never really been able to explore them because, like I said, because of the size of the business, also people you're in business with and things like that. So guardrails. So what I'm enjoying is having this amazing team. Like even when I've been away 2 of the last 4 weeks, I haven't even got a phone call. And it was funny, I'm sitting at, because I did Oxford first, then went to Stanford. And all the people I was there with, all execs, leaders of big businesses, they were all like stressing on their phone the whole time. And I was like sitting back just thinking, am I not important? Like, why isn't my phone going off? And I realized it was one, my wife at home, taking care of the kids, just owning it. And that's the backbone of the whole thing. But then it was the team at work. They're just pros. They're just doing it. And then what that's allowing to me to do is sort of explore some ideas on behalf of the team. So what are we doing? Where are we going next? So for me, what I'm focused on at the moment is challenging all of the norms and expectations of what it means to be a builder or a project manager. And seeing so for instance, our first 3 jobs were pretty much 3 out of 4 were spread. Mornington Peninsula, South Yarra, basically Mount Buller, right? Nowhere near each other. But I loved it because I think that what we do can be exported anywhere. I don't think there's any borders for architecture, and I don't think there's any borders for construction. But at the moment, in what we do, no one's doing it nationally. No one's... in Sydney, people won't even cross the bridge, for a 15-minute drive. So what I'm concentrating on at the moment is looking at my own business and what we're doing here in Victoria as a laboratory for this is the best way. This is our product. This is our service. This is where we hone our craft, and then looking at how we're doing it in sort of a distributed setting. And seeing that, talk about remote work, being a site manager, it was the first ever remote role because our guys are always on the business's account, they're actually the only one there. They're the only one in the office, so site managers have been doing remote work for years as when you think about it from a business point of view, because they're out there on their own isolated, running your whole product. So looking at that and then sort of looking at how we communicate as a team, because for me, and we're already looking at projects in Hobart, Sydney, Gold Coast. So from day one, it's a national business. When I say the best projects in Australia, we're thinking nationally for now. But then sort of right at the back, sort of when I've got some time at 4 a.m. in the morning in the office, is how do we really export our skill set anywhere? And that's probably something that's sort of my 4 to 7 a.m. thoughts, and then 7 till sort of 6 is construction here, and how we export it into state and how we do it in remote locations, which has been great because it's like we're getting feedback in the first 3 months of an organisation from jobs all around Victoria, really remote locations with before Starlink, like timing perfect, had no internet, no phone signal. So I don't know how they would have done it, but we just happened to do our first one, and got the Starlink, and it was fine. So we can use all our comms, WhatsApp, Teams, all that kind of stuff in the middle of nowhere. And then how do we get trades that we trust to that location? So like a mix of local, but our guys. And what's been really good about that is it's a lot harder to find a trade to work in the middle of central Victoria with no internet signal than it is to build a home in eastern suburbs of Sydney. So when clients in Sydney ask me, how do we know you can do it here? You'd say, because there's a lot of tradespeople around. There's a lot of talent. There's no skill shortage here. So that's what I'm really focusing on, is just breaking down some barriers of thought, at the luxury of my team really just doing so well at the critical parts of our business.
Last time we spoke about the idea of vertical integration in the construction industry. Yep. Is this something, have you developed more thoughts around sort of builders integrating with contractors or suppliers, vendors, sort of taking on more of that scope? Have you thought about that more?
Yeah, there's two trains of thought, right? So the business, one of the things as a business person that I think is important is sort of revenue per staff member. I think that's something something that everyone should be thinking about.
I mean, Google's good at it.
Pardon? They're fantastic.
What are they, 2.4 million per person or something like that?
That'd be probably more. Let's not talk exact figures. So let's say in construction at, say, potentially a multiplex or something like that, they're going to be well over $1 million of revenue per staff member, but the margins are down at 3% or whatever, right? I've always liked in construction, previously, $1 million per full-time staff member as a head contractor, as a builder, right? In our niche. As you start to take on smaller projects that you think, that's just good for revenue, you actually need another staff member, and you start generating this sort of inverse of that, which can get down to like 500 grand. And then I think you start with people problems. This is just from a builder. These are builders' numbers. Like, everyone's got their own number, right? Everyone's got the sweet spot.
They may as well be arbitrary. Everyone's business is slightly different.
So with my new business, I wanted to start with, literally, this is like founding of the business, how do I get to a certain value per staff member, of turnover per staff member, that I think like that's going to be a really good business? And say, for me personally, being open, it was probably about 1.5 million revenue per staff. So then how do you do that? So then that generates the next idea. You have to have big enough projects, because for a $15 million job or a $1 million job, you still need one project manager, right? We need one site manager for both jobs. So clearly, bigger jobs allow us to get more revenue per head count. And what I think that does, you don't know it. It's like the things that you don't know. It just tells you you're going to have less people problems, because you need less people to apply your trade. So that's something that I just think people should be considering. Like, what's the history of my business, and where was my happiest time? You hear so many contractors, like even the joiner that I've worked with for a decade, started small, doing really well, got really big, lost some money. Now I'm in my sweet spot. It's taken him 30, 40 years to get there. So he's learnt the lesson. Where's my sweet spot? And what he would have figured out, what he didn't realise he was figuring out, but at some point you become inefficient, because you end up employing people that you don't have the same connection with. You got a bit loose with your hiring policy, all that kind of stuff. the old grow too quick. But when I think, if you draw it back to maths and something that you can monitor, you can look at what was the best stage of my business and what was my headcount per revenue. What was my equation? And then that might be your sweet spot. And it's also a guiding light for good growth. Because then good growth is what your equation was then on scale. Not, not just growing for the sake of growing and just going, oh, we won 3 more jobs, get 5 more joiners, get this, get that. And I think that's a good guiding stuff, especially for founders that are very opportunity focused. It can just be a bit of a guard to say I'm taking on bad work because I'm going to need to put more staff on.
So it's paying attention to gross margin.
Yeah, but this is a secondary.
But it's not just gross margin. You said there's the people problems. There's the
gross margin's the
team,
outcome.
The team synergy. The
gross margin's the outcome, I would say. So when you say when were you happiest, probably when you're making the best gross margin. But so you've got an outcome, you've got some data there, and then let's uncover it, unpack it. What was good about the business then? And just my personal thought is that this is an equation that isn't being looked at enough and something that people should be looking at.
So you said something crazy before. You said between the hours of 4 to 7 in the morning. So you start your day at 4?
By the end, last 2 weeks, definitely, because sort of jet lag's been hanging around. But by the end of the week, so I'm a slow starter on Monday. I find by Friday night I'm really tired, and then I sort of sit with I got 2 little girls, 2 and 3-year-old girls, and I spend the weekend with them, and it sort of takes a couple of days, and then you sort of slow down into back to reality, what life should normally be like. So by Monday I'm sort of crawling into work at 7, get my shit together. But then by Friday, it's like the week gets enough momentum that I'll just get up, and because I'm used to getting out with kids, you just get up 4, you see the clock, and as long as it has a 4 in front of it, I'll get out of bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's 3, it's no, I got to try and get back to sleep. But if it's 4, it's instead of sitting here staring at the ceiling or on my phone, just get out of bed, get dressed, and get to the office. And there's no one there, and there'll be no one there for hours. So it's a really good time to do some stuff that's not, it can be critical to the business, or it could be coffee in hand, innovative thought. It's almost selfish, sort of, what are some things that I can't think about when the office becomes full, or, for you, the machines start going. So that's just a time that sort of I like to focus on things that future, things that might be 12 months, 2 years ahead, some quiet time to think. Because I don't get it at home. There's kids screaming as soon as you get in the door.
What's that been? So you've got 2 young girls.
Yeah.
How's that experience been? Becoming a father.
Unbelievable. Talk about service. Service at work is so much easier than you're getting paid to do it. You get when you get kids, everything's service. You don't realize in your 20s or whenever you're doing it, just traveling, enjoying yourself, being hungover with no one around. All those things are sort of luxuries that when you have children go out the window. And when I said before about leadership, leadership's hard, being a parent is exactly the same. It's just everything's just your fault. What can you blame a 2-year-old for? Spilling the milk? Why'd you leave the milk there? Who put the milk there? Who gave them the milk? You know what I mean? There's everything is your fault. Everything is hard. It's relentless. But it's also just easily, everyone, I feel like I'm just saying stupid parent stuff. It's also just the most happiness you can have.
Yeah.
My best part of my week is Saturday and Sunday mornings, taking the kids out on either their little scooter they've got, or I'll push the really young one, and we just go to the playground. It's routine. They expect it. It's they'll talk about it during the week, but on the day they know it's happening. Then it's once you get there, it's more routine. It's swing, slide. And if you were to say not to do part of it, they'd be like, what the hell is this? What are you doing? Are you okay? But it's the fulfillment is amazing. And then it also just gives you direction, helps you become a better business person, because you're just not distracted by things you are in your 20s or, by the things in society that are out there. You're focused. You come home, you're a family person. I think being a family person really helps in business, because it just centers you and focuses you on why. It gives you purpose as well.
Well, you made a very, great point before. You were gone for however long you were gone for. The team here was incredible, looking after everything, and you made a comment that it was short, but it was incredibly important, which is that your wife at home was looking after the children, and everything was just under control. So, and you were just there, focused on what you were doing and learning. So
yeah, I was present. And that's like, I'm sure it was very, very hard for her, yeah, herself with two little kids. And that's the other thing is you're conscious of that when you become a parent. Like as a couple, like as a couple, you're always, looking after each other and stuff. But as a parent, there's this consciousness of like, someone's always keeping it together. Like someone else has had a bad day or someone's been with the kids all day. So when you get home, like it's quite clear that person's really stressed, so it's now time for you to pick up the slack. There's these sort of things, and your relationships becomes even more giving and even more interpersonal, and the sacrifices. But you sort of there's a feeling where you're like, I might work a 14, 15-hour day, and my wife might know to like, that's it. I'll take care of the kids, I'll just put them to bed or whatever. And it's just sort of feeling that's that sort of sacrifice for each other. But while I was away, it was sort of like I was spending on a credit card of like with the team and at home of, I know this is ridiculously, what's the word? Like I was ridiculously privileged to go do this, to go on this learning experience that I'm hoping to apply and improve all those parts of business and personal. But it's a privilege, and you sort of feel like you're racking up debt. Like I'm going to get back, and I owe all these people, and it's like even this week it was clear. Like I had to batten down the hatches and get a heap of stuff done. But it doesn't end now. It's it's all give and take, always.
Yeah. So what do you? I guess looking forward. I mean, it's such an exciting time. The W is 1 year old now, is it?
Funnily enough, I think we're like 10 months old.
10 months old. So we're coming up on one. It's been an incredible start, and the momentum certainly isn't slowing down. What's your intuition telling you about the next 3 years?
In construction at W or
for yourself and for W?
I think breaking down barriers nationally, honing our systems. So we're clearly the best single dwelling builder in the country. So it's not a message. It's obvious. Expanding our network, being innovative, challenging what the norms are. But for me, if you look at it really simply, is honing our craft, exporting it across boundaries, across borders. So we'll start with the northern border of Victoria, and then we'll go from there.
That's incredible. The first podcast that we did together was we were saying before the show that I still get messages about it. We still people on the streets that talk to me about it. Like it's it was fantastic. So I really want to thank you for your time and being so gracious. I know you just got back from overseas as well, so thank you for giving your time to me and the podcast. Was there anything else you wanted to address or talk about today?
Not at all, no. It's just great to have a chat again.
Yeah.
Love to do this annually with you. It's good to have a catch up.
Annually, hopefully more often. Please message him and say more often.
No, this is awesome. I just think it's such a great idea. That's why I've come here and lectured you about making sure you don't not do it.
You and my mum both.
That's always a good sign. If someone's giving you the same advice as your mum, it means
mum knows
means
best.
It's good advice.
Yeah.
No, just that you've done a great thing. This is great. This is great. We need to get more people in industry talking. They're all ideas, even if they're bad ones. It's still data points, like we said. So I'm going to keep listening. Also, anyone that you've asked that said no, like ask them again, right? Ask them again.
Yeah.
And to the person that said no, like, what are you doing? Well, say yes. Like, come and have a chat with you. You're the nicest guy ever. Like, just have a chat, explore some ideas. You might learn something. I learn stuff off you every time I come. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.